Hi everyone, thank you so much for stopping by my channel. Here, I love sharing stories, useful knowledge, and personal experiences that can hopefully bring value to your day. I truly appreciate your support, so if you enjoy the content, consider subscribing and being part of this growing community.
I got home late on a Thursday night, the kind of late where the house is quiet and the only light on is the one above the stove. My wife had left it on for me the way she always did, ever since our first apartment 22 years ago. I remember thinking how small and ordinary that detail was, how I used to love her for it. I hung my jacket on the hook by the garage door and reached for hers to do the same. She had tossed it over the stair railing the way she always did when she came home tired, and I was being helpful, or maybe I just needed something to do with my hands. That's when I felt it, a hard plastic rectangle in her left pocket. I pulled it out and held it under the hallway light. It was a hotel key card. The kind with just a logo and a room number written in black marker on the paper sleeve. Room 412, the Meridian Hotel, downtown. My wife had told me she spent last Friday night at her colleague Karen's house because they had an early Saturday morning conference. I believed her without a second thought. I hadn't even asked for details. I stood there in my hallway for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. A dog barked somewhere down the street. I put the key card back in her pocket, hung her coat on the hook, and walked into the kitchen. I stood at the counter and drank a glass of water. Then I went upstairs, got into bed next to my wife, and lay there in the dark staring at the ceiling until 5 in the morning. My name is not important. What matters is this. I am 51 years old. I spent 22 years building a life with a woman I trusted completely. I have 2 kids, both in college now, both good people. I work as a senior project engineer at a firm that builds highway infrastructure. I am not a dramatic man. I do not make scenes. I do not yell. I solve problems methodically, the same way I have always done, the same way I was trained to do when I was 23 years old and my foreman told me that a calm mind builds better bridges than a hot one. My wife is 48. She runs the administrative operations for a regional medical group, 12 clinics across 3 counties. She is organized, precise, and excellent at her job. She is also, as I was beginning to understand, very good at keeping secrets. I did not confront her that morning. I got up, made coffee, kissed her on the cheek when she came downstairs, and went to work. I am not sure she noticed anything different about me. That bothered me more than the key card. At work, I could not concentrate on anything. I sat at my desk and opened a project file and stared at the numbers until they stopped making sense. Around 10 in the morning, I called my older brother. He is 56, retired from a 20-year career as a corporate attorney, and he's the only person I trust completely outside of my immediate family. I told him I needed to talk. He told me to come over for lunch. I sat at his kitchen table and put the hotel key card down in front of him without saying a word. He picked it up, turned it over, set it back down. He asked me what I knew. I told him everything, which at that point was almost nothing. He folded his hands on the table and looked at me the way he used to look at opposing counsel when he was about to take something apart. He said the first thing I needed to do was nothing. Absolutely nothing that she could see or feel or notice. He said the second thing I needed to do was find out the truth before I did anything else, because suspicion without evidence was just misery, and I deserved more than misery. He said I would have time to feel everything I was feeling after I knew what I was dealing with, not before. That is why I have an older brother. I drove back to work and I thought about everything he said, and I began to think clearly for the first time since the night before. My wife and I have a joint account and 2 separate checking accounts for personal expenses. She manages her own finances and I manage mine, a system we have had for years. But we share the same wireless plan, and my name is the primary account holder, which means I can see the call and data logs anytime I want. I had never looked at them before. I had never had a reason to. That night, after my wife fell asleep, I sat in my car in the driveway and pulled up the account on my phone. I went back 3 months and started reading. There was a number that appeared so regularly, it almost looked like a pattern. Tuesday mornings between 9 and 10, Thursday evenings around 6:30. The occasional Sunday afternoon, calls lasting 20, 30, sometimes 40 minutes. I ran the number. It came back to a man I will call by his first name only. Dwight, 46 years old. My wife and Dwight had met 3 years ago through a professional development program for healthcare administrators. I had met him once at a charity dinner my wife's company hosted. He had shaken my hand, told me my wife was one of the best people in the industry, and then spent the next hour across the room laughing at things she said. I had not thought anything of it at the time. Dwight was married. His wife worked as a high school principal in a town about 40 minutes north of us. They had 3 children. The oldest was 16. I sat in my car for a long time after I found that out. I'm a methodical man. I went back inside, went to bed, and slept for 4 hours. When I woke up, I had a plan. I called my brother the next morning and told him what I found. He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked me what I wanted to do. I told him I did not want to blow up my life on the basis of a phone log and a hotel key card. I wanted to know everything before I moved. He said that was the smartest thing I had said since I called him yesterday, and then he gave me the name of someone he knew, a man he had used during litigation when he needed documentation done right and done quietly. I met with that man 2 days later. He was in his late 40s, wore a plain gray jacket, and looked like someone who had spent his entire career being invisible on purpose. I explained my situation. He explained his fee. We shook hands. I told him I needed 3 weeks of documentation, and I needed it clean. He said that was not a problem. What followed was the most surreal 3 weeks of my life. My wife and I had dinner together most nights. We watched television. We talked about our kids, about an upcoming vacation we had half planned, about the neighbor's dog that kept digging under the fence. She was warm. She was present. She made me laugh twice during a Sunday morning that I remember clearly because I spent part of that afternoon in my home office staring at a wall wondering how a person could do that. How a person could be that 2 places at once. My brother told me to stop trying to understand it. He said understanding it was not the point and never would be. He said the point was documentation. After 3 weeks, the investigator called me to a meeting. He set a manila envelope on the table between us. He told me what was inside before I opened it. Photographs, dates, locations, and a summary of what he had been able to confirm through public records and direct observation. He pushed the envelope toward me and said he was sorry. There were photographs from a hotel in the city, a different one than the Meridian, taken over 2 separate visits. There were photographs from a restaurant 40 miles away, the kind of place no one from here would recognize anyone. There was a record of a weekend trip 3 months ago that my wife had told me was a professional conference in Atlanta. She had been in Atlanta, but she had not been at any conference. The hotel receipt showed 2 names on the reservation. My wife had been doing this for at least 14 months, possibly longer. I drove home that night and I sat in the driveway for a long time. The light above the stove was on. I looked at it through the garage window for probably 5 full minutes. Then I went inside. I want to tell you that I was destroyed. And I was. But there is a kind of damage that goes so deep it actually gets quiet. I was not yelling inside my own head the way I might have expected. I was very, very still. I thought about my kids. I thought about what I had built and what it had apparently meant to the other person who was supposed to be building it with me. I thought about every trip, every late night, every moment I had not questioned because I had no reason to. Then I went to work. I called my brother the next morning and told him what was in the envelope. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, he was quiet for about 15 seconds. Then he said, "What do you want the outcome to be? Not what do you want to do to her? What do you want to do to her? What do you want the outcome to be?" I thought about it. I said I wanted my kids to be okay. I said I wanted the truth in front of everyone who deserved to see it. And I said I wanted out of this marriage without losing everything I had worked for. My brother said then, "Let's start at the end and build backward." That is how he always worked. He told me the first thing I needed to do was retain an attorney of my own, quietly, before my wife had any reason to think I was planning anything. He gave me a name. I made an appointment. The attorney told me that in our state, documented infidelity was relevant to asset division. He told me to secure copies of everything financial, every account, every asset, every liability, and to make sure I had them somewhere she could not access or alter. I spent a weekend going through files I had not looked at in years and making copies of everything I found. The second thing I did involved Dwight's wife. This was the part my brother had concerns about. He told me I needed to think very carefully about why I was doing it. He said if I was doing it because she deserved to know the truth, that was one thing. He said if I was doing it purely to burn Dwight's life down as a side effect of my own situation, that was another thing. And I needed to be honest with myself about which one it was. I thought about it for 2 days. I thought about Dwight's wife, a woman I had never met, who was probably doing exactly what I had been doing for the past 14 months, trusting someone who did not deserve it. I thought about her 3 kids. I thought about what it would mean for her to find out on her own terms, with evidence, rather than to find out later. after more time had been wasted. I decided I would contact her, not to hurt Dwight, but because I would have wanted someone to tell me. I drafted a letter. I did not write it in anger. I wrote it the way I would write anything important, clearly, factually, and with enough detail that it could not be dismissed or explained away. I included a selection of the documentation the investigator had prepared, enough to make the truth undeniable. I included my phone number in case she had questions, and I told her she did not have to use it. I mailed it to her home address on a Wednesday. She called me on Friday evening. My wife was at a book club, or so she said. I stepped out to the back porch and answered the phone. She was composed, in a way that told me she had probably suspected for a while and had been waiting for confirmation. We talked for about 20 minutes. She asked me how long I had known. I told her the full story. She asked me what I was planning to do. I told her I was filing for divorce. She told me she was going to do the same. We did not talk about our feelings. We talked about logistics. I respected her enormously for that. At the end of the call, she thanked me, and I told her she did not need to thank me. She said she was going to anyway. The next morning, I called Dwight directly. I called him from my regular number so he would see who it was. He picked up on the third ring. He said hello, and I said, I know everything. I have documentation. My attorney already has copies, and so does your wife. I am filing for divorce next week, and I would strongly suggest you speak with your own attorney before I do. Then I hung up. He called back twice. I did not answer. I came back inside and made myself breakfast. Scrambled eggs and coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and ate and thought about what the next few months were going to look like. Then I washed the dish, put it in the rack, and went to the living room to read. My wife came home from what she said was an early morning walk. She was in workout clothes. She greeted me with a smile and asked if I wanted to go to the farmer's market. I said yes. We drove there together and walked through the stalls, and she bought tomatoes and a jar of honey, and I carried the bag. We drove home. She made lunch. I waited until Monday. On Monday morning, after my wife left for work, I called her into the kitchen on the pretense of showing her a leak under the sink. She came in, set her bag down, and looked at where I was pointing. I was sitting at the table. I had the manila envelope in front of me and my hands flat on the table. She straightened up and looked at me, and something shifted in her face. Not guilt exactly. More like recognition. Like a part of her had always known this moment was somewhere up ahead. I did not yell. I told her what I had found and when I had found it. I told her I had documentation going back 14 months. I told her my attorney already had everything he needed. I told her I had contacted Dwight's wife and that I had spoken to Dwight directly. I told her we were done. She sat down across from me. She did not cry immediately, which I think surprised both of us. She said she was sorry. She said it had not started as anything serious. She said she had not intended for it to go as far as it did. She said she still loved me. I told her that I believed she believed all of that, and then I told her it did not change anything. She asked me about the kids. I told her we would tell them together as soon as she was ready to do that, and that I would not say anything to them that was not fair or accurate, but that I was also not going to lie to protect anyone's reputation at the expense of the truth. She nodded. Her eyes were wet now, but she was still holding herself together with a kind of controlled precision that reminded me, oddly, of why I had fallen in love with her in the first place. She was always composed. She was always in control. I stood up and picked up the envelope. I told her I had already spoken with a real estate attorney about the house and that I intended to be reasonable about the division of assets. I told her I expected the same in return. I told her my attorney would be in touch within the week. Then I walked out, got in my car, and drove to my brother's house. He was on the front porch with 2 cups of coffee like he had been expecting me, which he probably had. I sat down next to him and we looked at his front yard for a while without talking. A maple at the edge of his property had started turning early. A couple of orange leaves had already dropped to the grass. He said, "How are you?" I told him I had no idea. He said that was probably accurate. We sat there for another few minutes. He refilled both cups from a thermos. I told him the whole thing, start to finish. He listened the way he always listens, completely, without filling the silence with anything unnecessary. When I was done, he asked me if I had eaten breakfast. I told him I had. He said, "Good." He told me what I had done was about as clean as something this hard could be done. He said I had not destroyed anyone out of spite. I had not put my kids in the middle, and I had not let my anger make decisions for me. He said he was proud of me. Coming from him, that meant something. The divorce took 8 months. It was not easy, and it was not clean. But it was fair, which was all I had asked for. We divided the house, the savings, the retirement accounts, and we worked out a co-parenting arrangement with a mediator instead of going back to court every 6 months. My wife did not fight me on the documentation. I think she understood by the time we were done that fighting would have only made it worse for everyone, including herself. Dwight and his wife filed within a month of each other. I know because she called me once more, a few weeks after the filing, just to tell me how things were going. She did not sound broken. She sounded like someone who had made a decision and was following through on it. We wished each other well, and that was the last time we spoke. My kids took it hard the way kids take these things hard when they are old enough to understand exactly what happened. My son asked me once, very directly, if I could have done anything differently to prevent it. I told him honestly that I did not think so. He nodded and looked out the window and then asked if I wanted to shoot hoops in the driveway. We played for about an hour. My daughter did not ask me much at first, but about 6 months later she called me late on a Tuesday night and we talked for 2 hours. She asked all the questions her brother hadn't. I answered them all honestly. By the end of the call, she was okay. We were okay. That mattered more to me than anything else in this story. I am telling you all of this because I know there are men out there lying in bed at night staring at ceilings, the way I did, with a piece of evidence in their hand and a mind full of static trying to figure out what to do next. I am not going to tell you what the right answer is because I do not believe there is a single right answer. What I can tell you is what worked for me. Calm. Documentation. A clear picture of the outcome you want before you take a single step toward it. And a brother who keeps coffee on the porch. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment that October. It was on the 3rd floor of a building near the river, and the bedroom window faced east, which meant I woke up every morning with sunlight coming through the blinds. The 2nd bedroom had a bed and a dresser in it, and my kids had their own keys. They used them more than I expected. That first Thanksgiving, I ordered a full meal from a grocery store because I did not feel like cooking, and my brother and his wife came over, and my son drove down from his college 3 hours away, and my daughter flew in from school on the West Coast. We ate at my kitchen table with the containers still half open because none of us could figure out where I had put the serving spoons. We ate out of the containers. We laughed about it. My daughter took a photograph and sent it to the family group chat with a caption that said, "Real elegance." My son called my wife on Thanksgiving morning. My daughter did too. I know because they told me, and because I had told them to. Their relationship with their mother is theirs to figure out. That has nothing to do with mine. I have been asked if I regret any of it. The marriage, the years, the way it ended. I do not regret the marriage. 22 years produced 2 people I am immensely proud of. A version of myself I could not have become any other way. And a set of values about what honesty and commitment actually mean that I will carry for the rest of my life. The ending was not what I would have chosen. But endings rarely are. What I know is this: I did not shrink. I did not explode. I found out the truth. I handled it with my head instead of my hands, and I walked out of that chapter of my life with my dignity intact, and my kids still willing to drive 3 hours and fly across the country to eat Thanksgiving turkey out of plastic containers in my kitchen. Some days that feels like enough. Most days, I think it might be more than most people get.